Morning, everyone, once again. When you greetings from this University, Nigeria, I want to commend the organizers of this conference. This is my first time attending the CBER conference, and indeed, it's been a blessing. So I'm going home with quite a number of insights to apply within the university. Thank you so much. So we have I am an associate professor of human resource management and also the immediate past the director of Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And this platform giving me opportunities to research on how best employees can be utilized to achieve both higher levels of performance for the organizations and for the individual employees. So one of this research is looking at the public service performance. How can we push the frontiers of performance of public service within the Nigerian context via training and development? Now, the background to this study within Nigeria, highest employer of labor. It means that the majority of persons underpaid employment are hired by the government, and they are being represented by the public service agencies. And consistently, studies have shown that there are gaps, challenges in terms of performance of the public service workers. So myself and my colleague have done several studies, but particularly for this, the aim is to look at the influence of the continuous culture of upskilling the public service in order to ensure that the best in terms of workforce delivery is achieved. Now, there have been several initiatives, there have been several models, especially the Public Service Reform Program, which has, in a way, fostered deliverables in terms of the workforce. However, there are gaps within the context of this initiative. Now, there is a current misalignment between training objectives and strategic goals of the agencies. We find out that there's been these issues of biases in selecting employees who will be pushed forward for trainings. At times, the issues of nepotism, favoritism. At the end of the day, the government spends so much on training, and this doesn't amount to aftermath of training, which is improvement in the skills, improvement in the abilities and the knowledge in terms of applying them on the job. Then another factor we found out, which is a gap, is that there is no structured follow-up system, to actually monitoring the impact of the training, whether learning actually happened. It's very, very low. Then, of course, the perceived inequalities I've mentioned before now in terms of there is an interplay of reward management system as influencing how the beneficiaries of this training actually learned and apply such learning on their jobs. Basically, looking at the main objectives of the study, of course, it is to examine how can we come up with a design, how can we come up with a framework, and how can this framework be implemented, to the T&D initiatives, which will eventually enhance the public service performance within the Nigerian government agencies. Secondly, to identify effective strategies that aligns, because there must be a synergy, there must be an overlap between, like a knot between these training programs and the challenges we want to address. Okay, then thirdly, how do we ascertain the relevance of this training, the training content? Because every for a training to have a positive effect, there must be a gap it ought to address. So how do we enhance the relevance of this training content? How can they be tailored through follow-up mechanism, of course, in the actual acquisition of knowledge? Then, of course, we really need to know and provide policy-oriented recommendations. I do not want to go us on the literature. We looked at current literatures because of recency and contemporary happenings within the space of training and development. Now, the anchor theory for this survey is hinged on human capital theory. And human capital theory simply says, when you invest, when you see the employees as a threshold, when you actually value them as talent and you invest deliberately in them via trainings and development, whether on the job or off the job, it enhances their skills, their competencies, it enhances their productivity. And of course, this takes a toll on the overall performance of the organization, especially the government agencies. Another theory, of course, the capability approach. Then all of this theory, of course, helps to understand the narrative and dynamics, the interplay between training and development, because they form the bedrock of every employee career and their performances. The study is a cross-sectional survey, and several government agencies were selected. So population is over 5,000, and the determination formula was engaged, and we have 1,485 sample sites. And of course, the instrument was validated, and analysis was done through descriptive and inferential statistics. Of course, the regression analysis was engaged to find out the correlations, the relationship between the variables. In terms of data, we found out that from demographics, we found out that 54% of the respondents were male, and female were 46. I feel Africa is balancing up in terms of gender. Before now, studies have shown a very wide gap of women within paid employment. But this is 2025, and we'll have the female making 46% of the respondents of the workforce. It means that it's good news for us. The issues of glass ceiling and all that, very soon and shortly, will be a thing of the past. So looking at the education and the levels, over 68%, let's say 68% has at least a fourth degree or HND. It means that the government is not doing badly in terms of hiring a workforce, a knowledge-based workforce, and this has implication on the training and development. Then looking at the item on training and development in terms of training support, well over, using the Likert scale, over 90%. So we try to match those respondents who has agreed and strongly agreed together. We have 90% of them saying they actually benefited, and this in a way speaks to optimal job performance. However, However, after this session, we engage a number of them verbally. We find out that most of these trainings, there are no measures, there are no monitoring system to actually ascertain, okay, using the KPIs, key performance indicators to understand if there is an enhanced skill. So there are no structured frameworks. So it tells us that there is the need for government agencies to be more proactive and to be more deliberate in monitoring training outcomes. Of course, looking at other indicators that speaks to the acquisition of knowledge in terms of training, we looked at performance appraisal. We found out that there is a regular feedback, and as a Nigerian, I feel within the government there is a gap between the multinational organizations and the government-owned organizations. We find out that most times we have the A&P, we call it appraisals, and these things come in, I won't say in a ritual way, but mandatory, it should be done. But at the end of the day, you find out that managerial decisions were not based on some of these feedbacks. In conclusion, training and development significantly has a place if we must have a vibrant workforce, whether in a government agency, a multinational organization. And there is the need, okay, to deliberately design a training need looking into the existing gap. Until this is done, the whole essence of training is just like a leisure. Then there is for aligning training needs with career progression will be a pathway for organizational leaders within the government agencies to embrace. Thank you for your time.
So thank you. In our Masters of HR program, we have capstone projects where companies request our students' help, and it's very common for them to request this where they ask, can you have a student come in and help us assess whether or not our training is having a positive effect on employee performance? And so I'm curious to hear, in your view, what would be, how would you know whether the training is having a positive effect?
Yes, I've said I've been in the space of HR as a practitioner and as a scholar. Now, before we initiate any training, there must be a need analysis. And need analysis happens at 3 levels: individual level analysis, departmental or unit level analysis, or business unit level analysis, then the corporate level analysis. When we go through a scientific, there is a short survey we engage in, a scientific process to be able to gather the data. Why have you not been performing? Why is the performance low? The employee gives the feedback, and that helps the HR to understand the key area, the key gap that is existing, and of course, initiates the exact training program that will address those gaps.
Thank you.